The Baylor Bears just pulled off the steal of the summer. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Gametime. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I will be using them in a couple weeks to go to a Red Sox game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on the Rogue Media Sports Network. And boy, what a weekend it was for yours, mine, our Baylor Bears. It has been a couple of good weeks in a row in terms of the recruiting trail, but it got tipped on its head on Saturday when composite four-star wide receiver Taz Williams out of Red Oak had four hats on the table: Penn State, Michigan, SMU, A&M. And instead he said, nope, I'm going to Baylor. Shocked the nation with his commitment to the Baylor Bears, joined forces with his friend Cameron Morgan and former teammate at Red Oak, two four-star guys after Baylor went 2 years without signing a four-star guy, committing to that 2025 class. One of the guys who was there on Saturday at the commitment was Carter Yates of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We're going to talk with him about this commitment, what it means for Baylor, this real recruiting momentum as seen from the outside, and an article he wrote on Dave Campbell's Texas Football called The Duality of Dave Aranda, and how he has changed, or maybe how he hasn't changed in these few years at Baylor, and what that could mean for the Bears going forward, and how they have morphed their program around their head coach, this time for the better. Anyway, let's take it away with Carter Yates and Dave from Dave Campbell's Texas Football here on Locked On Baylor. Here he is, as promised, Carter Yates of Dave Campbell's Texas Football, friend of Locked On Baylor. Carter, first, before we get into all the Baylor stuff, just tell me, how was your first full year, full-time Dave Campbell's?
Oh, first year was a blessing. It was everything I thought it was going to be and more. Just getting to travel around the state, cover football full time as a job. It's something that, when you're growing up, you only think is a dream scenario, and then it happens. And I couldn't be more happy with it. Now, looking forward to year two. I got it a little more under my belt now and feel like I'm more knowledgeable about all the teams.
Awesome.
Where the first year was flying by the seat of my pants a little bit.
Well, you've kind of got you're firmly entrenched in this almost brat pack of Dave Campbell's with you and Ish and Pickle and Mallory. It's like this young crop, this new generation of Dave Campbell's. It's been a lot of fun. And I know you were there Saturday for Taz Williams' commitment and what becomes, really, for what I've been seeing, the shock of the summer when it comes to recruiting. So tell me what that atmosphere was like and what those tense few minutes were like between the Michigan hat and then the Baylor and then getting the microphone finally, what it was like inside that gym.
Well, first off, no one puts on a production like Taz Williams Jr. He had the snow cone truck out front. He had the entire junior varsity team out there in their Red Oak jerseys. The gym was pretty packed. And we heard there was a big production and some props that were going on. When he starts and he spins the wheel, I'm thinking, is this going to magically land on the team he's picking? Is there a magnet behind the wheel?
I was thinking, what?
Or maybe he's just going to freewheel it here and see, let God decide. But so he puts the Michigan hat on, and the gym's almost a little confused, because it's that was in his top four. It seems like somewhere that he was getting rumored to. He quickly takes that off. His dad starts ripping down the black canvas on the back, turns it around, and it's Baylor, which was a total shock to everyone there. Wasn't in his top four, wasn't a bucket hat on the table. So Taz Williams, commitment of the summer, I think.
Yeah. And it was definitely an awkward minute there of okay, like you said, Michigan's on the table. This shouldn't be surprising, but no one's really saying anything. There was just one poor sap who was kind of going to be the guinea pig who was going to be thrown away when he chose Baylor. And I got to tell you, I was shocked. I was shocked watching it. Like we said, not even on the bucket hat podium there, not in rotation. So you cover a lot of these. You've seen a lot of these in your time. how freaky is that I only pay attention to the Baylor ones, but how freaky is that to have a kid, put out his top 10, top 5, top 4, and then not go with any one of those on commitment day?
I think the surprise has been taken out of recruitment a lot. Like, I know that everyone freaked out at Pete Thamel for leaking the Oregon that was getting Decorian Moore. And no one really leaks a commitment, but with all the crystal balls, you feel like you have a general sense and a really good idea of where a kid's going to go. For Taz Williams to commit to a school that was not in his top 4, we're talking before we hit record. I don't know when he took a visit, if he did take a visit. You don't get shots like this in recruiting anymore. But I think I don't know, man, this generation of athletes, they like making headlines and making waves like that. And I don't think anyone does it better than Taz Williams.
I mean, you said it. He puts on a show. He really does. And this is the second, it's funny that you point that out of this is so 2025, because this is the second commitment Baylor's had in a couple of weeks that was like that. Corey Watson had the UH hat on, threw it into the crowd and picked Baylor, and then this. So it feels like the athletes themselves are kind of trying to take this back, so to speak. And you got a chance to see Taz Williams this year. I know Red Oak ain't far from your guys' offices up there in the DFW area. So just tell me what popped from him in either on the tape or what you saw in that game late in the season.
Well, the game I saw, he had 2 touchdown catches. So, I mean, he took over the game, and it was to clinch Red Oak's district championship over Midlothian. So he stepped up in the biggest moment. The stat sheet, it filled it up. 80 catches last year for 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns. When I watch Taz, he's a burner. He's got a 22-second, 200-meter time. He was on Red Oak's silver state medal 4x200 team. I really like how he plays. He's got great awareness on the field. So he's an absolute deep threat, but there's a lot of catches he'll make where they'd be good in the NFL. He's getting both feet in bounds. He's got great awareness with where he is on the field. And I like how he would fit in Jake Spavital's offense, because Jake Spavital likes a lot of option routes to where the wide receiver, it's an out and up concept. He can take it out or he can go streak based on what that cornerback is playing in coverage. And you see that a lot of times in Red Oak's offense. They are backyard football in the best way. Like him and his quarterback, Reggie Moody from last year, they almost have telekinesis going on where you can see them working in real time, pointing down the field, and then Taz takes off and goes. I mean, he's a really fun player to watch. There's a reason he's the most offered player in Texas high school football. I think he had 50 or something like that. It was nuts.
Yeah, and they're all, it's not just 50 of the lower level like we were talking, the bluest of blue bloods, man. Michigan, Penn State, USC, Alabama, all of them really, really wanted Taz Williams. And I liked your point about the offense, because I do want to build on that a little bit. We those of us who pay attention to Texas high school football, we know almost all of them, for the exception of a great Franklin team, will run out spread offenses, working out of the shotgun, which even wasn't necessarily the case 10 years ago. So that said, with Baylor going from a wide zone, which seems archaic with looking at Jake Spavital's offense now, to that Jake Spavital offense, how much does that help them just as reputation to get to a recruit like a Taz Williams or like those playmaking guys on the offensive side? Do you think that makes a difference?
I think it does make a difference. And not that Baylor wasn't in the market for these high explosive level wide receivers, but Jake Spavital has a reputation that precedes him, working with Kyler Murray and working at Texas State. He had a lot of great quarterbacks. I believe he's at Texas A&M, coach Johnny Manziel, then into Kyler Murray. So, this Baylor offense, what I'm really excited to see is them airing out the football. I think Jeff Grimes had an attack that was far more run-based. Not a lot of freedom in the offense like you see with Jake Spavital having option routes and things of that nature. I think, man, Jake Spavital's offense and Dave Aranda's defense, I think them acting as the de facto play callers, I don't know which two guys you'd rather have. Now, how that works out on the field with Aranda being the head coach and also having another head coach with coaching experience, I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's a really interesting experiment they're going to be doing.
Passion, drive, patience, the things that make Taz Williams such a great prospect, and the things that make Baylor have a great summer in terms of the recruiting trail are also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, just like the Bears in 2025. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You are not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to our U.S. customers. And keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. And more towards Taz here, because this is something that falls under the category of I only pay attention to the Baylor stuff, so I don't see as much of it as our pals at Dave Campbell's would. But we see Cameron Morgan commit to the Bears less than a week before Taz Williams unexpectedly does the same. Morgan, they were obviously teammates at Red Oak. Morgan now at South Oak Cliff, very good friends. And we see, other guys in the class trying to recruit players to come and team up. And I'm wondering, how often do you see that where two friends and teammates are, making this really important life decision and saying, you know what, let's do this thing together. It seems like something that comes up all the time of like, oh, we got this guy and he's teammates with this guy. But how often does it actually come to fruition?
I think you see it more nationally now with social media. Guys are connecting throughout the state, and even like, a big time recruit in Georgia. Like I was at the Dalen McCutcheon commitment. He shouted out CJ Wiley, a wide receiver who committed to Florida State. That guy's from Georgia. I don't know if they've ever met each other, but they know of each other. So I think this was cool and a little old school of Taz and Morgan, because they played on the same team and have been friends since grade school. And Taz, in his interview with us after his commitment, basically said Cameron Morgan committing to Baylor had a huge impact on him. Like he was at the commitment the week before, and Morgan turns to him and says, hey, remember freshman year at Red Oak when we went 2-8 and then we turned it around sophomore year, went 9-3? We have a chance to do that in college at Baylor. So that was kind of something that's very cool. These guys are both high-level recruits, and they're not just looking to go to a team that, look, Baylor had a tough year last year, but I think sometimes kids these days take it as a challenge, and it's exciting for them to go and be a part of a culture shift.
So what you're telling me, Carter, is the 3-9 is going to help Baylor down the line, because I'm ready to buy into that. I'm ready to buy into that.
I'm not going to go that far.
Oh, fine. Oh, fine. Speaking of which, I mean, not just Taz, and obviously Cameron was a big part of it too, but this has been a good run here for Baylor the last couple of weeks. I mean, I was looking at it towards the end of June, and it was like, this ain't all that great. It's just, it wasn't on life support or anything, this 25 recruiting class, but I was like, this is not really solidifying me for Dave Aranda and his plan that he gave to Mac Rhodes. But tell me about what this last couple of weeks have been. I mean, this puts Baylor firmly in the top 3 or 4 in the Big 12 for recruiting rankings, that class of 25.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been at Dave Campbell's too long, but I haven't seen anything like it since I've been on the job, the momentum that Baylor has. And I think a lot of it has to do with running backs coach Keenan Hall. I mean, that's who Taz Williams shouted out. He said that Keenan Hall had built that relationship at SMU, and that was one of the hats that was actually on Taz Williams' table.
Good point, yeah.
You hear so much stuff about how Keenan Hall is a genuine recruiter. I think it started at SMU, but he's continued it right on at Baylor. I think his presence on the team can't be overstated. And I know, look, Dave Aranda, we'll probably talk about it. He caught a lot of social media attention for the, we're paying players deal. But I mean, I have no problem with it if you're Dave Aranda. Because, look, everyone's doing it. And what Dave Aranda is trying to do is transformational in a transactional process. So, yes, everyone's paying players, but they still need to go to a school that they feel they can get an education. They feel they're going to have mentors there. And I think that's what Baylor always was doing really well. Like Dave Aranda talked about at Big 12 Media Days, he felt great after every official visit, in-home visit. The NIL just wasn't there for them to land these recruits. And that's why they fell from 35th to 62nd last year. And the 2024 class really bottomed out. So I think you're saying a really good blend of NIL and the personality-driven recruiting.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's one of the big reasons why I personally think the transfer portal is not, the numbers aren't going to dwindle over the next couple of years, because I think there are kids who are looking at that NIL package, right? And they see it and then they get to the place and then they're like, this isn't really the spot. So then they hit the portal. And so are you hearing that from recruits of like, you know, you mentioned the before of, hey, Baylor was great, but they just didn't have the NIL. But now is that narrative starting to change of like, hey, I might not make as much money as Baylor than I would at an A&M or something, but I'm going to make good money. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to live okay. And also, I really do believe in what they got going on here.
Well, I think Dave Aranda is someone who plays to the parents very well. Like, honestly, if I had a son who was going to play major college football, I'm wanting to send him to play with Dave Aranda and his staff, because I've talked with Jackson Blackwell, Lorena defensive line commit, and we do these inside the commitment type deals. Why'd you go to this school? And he said he picked Baylor. They weren't even in his top when he went on the official visit. And then he was like, Dave Aranda is the most honest Power 4 head coach I've met. And that's why he's going to say at Big 12, like, the difference is we're paying players, because it's never been like a Dave Aranda can't recruit or people don't believe in what Dave Aranda wants to accomplish. It was strictly an NIL deal and a little bit of an on-field deal. It's not anything personal with Dave Aranda. So I think once you add those two factors in, Dave Aranda is a guy who, he's not loud and boisterous and a politician, but he's real, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And through the ups and the downs, you can at least say that about Dave, is that he seems like the genuine article, no matter what he's saying or what he's trying to say. Absolutely. And I did mean to ask this about Keenan Hall, because that seems to be the guy, right? Like, all of a sudden, Keenan Hall has come in here and the recruits start to follow. And you made the point about SMU, where he was before. And really the last 3 or 4 years, SMU has started to be like, like they're getting on everyone's table, especially in that DFW area. Like they nailed that with the whole Dallas branding and all of that. And it's still continuing even with Keenan Hall gone. But since he's at Baylor, we're starting to see some SMU guys flip to Baylor. We're starting to see a lot more action in the DFW area. Is that something you anticipate to continue in terms of that ultimate high school football area in Dallas-Fort Worth, seeing Baylor on a lot of these tables that normally you'd be like, they don't have any right being there?
No, I think definitely. And it's not to bring up a bad memory for Baylor, but it is similar to how Joey McGuire, when he was at Baylor, built that relationship with Micah Hudson. And then once he goes to Tech's automatically the leader for Micah Hudson's recruitment. Yeah. This is what Keenan, like, look, the coaching circle gives and it takes. Like, Baylor has benefited now from SMU and the momentum that Keenan Hall built there. Now coming to Baylor, he brings a little bit of that swagger he had at SMU. He brings a little bit, where they're going to be on tables that maybe they weren't in the past. I think the importance of having a guy like Keenan Hall to pair with Dave Aranda, we talk about Dave Aranda isn't a loud, boisterous type. Keenan Hall's more of a guy who will relate to the kids, right? Like, he'll relate to the kids. He's energetic. He's young. Dave Aranda is kind of like the elder statesman at the top there to pair with him.
And this next one might seem obvious, but we do see some decisions that go against the grain. I'll use the Micah Hudson one there. I mean, Tech was a dark horse to win the conference last year. A lot of people were thinking 8-9 wins. They got to 7 before the bowl game, and by no means was it a bad season, but Micah Hudson sticks around. In this case of Baylor, back-to-back losing seasons, no guarantee that this is going to be a winning season this year. Looking at the roster, hope to be, but no guarantee of that. If Baylor scuffles again this year, does that automatically hurt this 2025 recruiting class? Do you think these kids start to look elsewhere? Is that what you hear from typical recruits?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about commitments, they're very nice, but you can't rest until signing day, right? And I was talking about this with someone at the commitment yesterday, but Baylor's had 9 commits since June, right? And they have a lot of positive momentum, but I don't know, 3-9 season happens again. I don't know if everyone stays on for that. You're not signing in the summer, right? It's still open until you get to December early signing day. That being said, you commit for a reason. Like, these kids aren't just committing willy-nilly. They do feel that Dave Aranda has this going in the right direction, and they do want to be at Baylor, but obviously things do change as you go throughout the season. I don't think Baylor will be 3-9 again. Like, I really think last year was the bottoming out point. Now it's only up from there. So I wouldn't see like a mass exodus happening, but worst case scenario, this was an awesome summer that ended up, I don't know where all these guys went.
Yeah. And I hope you're right about that bottoming out. I think you're probably right, but we'll see in terms of this 2024 season is still a toss-up for me. But talking about Dave Aranda, which we have a lot in this podcast here, you dropped I thought, a great article last week out at Big 12 Media Days about, it's called The Duality of Dave Aranda and the two different guys that we have seen, I say we, over his time really at LSU and Baylor, and how that's helped and hurt. Just what did you get from Dave Aranda at this Big 12 Media Days that felt different from what you've heard from him in the past?
I don't know if it was any different, really. I think Dave Aranda has been pretty steady since he's taken over at Baylor. Like, the results haven't been steady, but he personality-wise has been steady. He's always been honest. He's always admitted when stuff has been wrong or he has done stuff wrong. Like, you see him talk about NIL, how he was part of the reason Baylor was not competitive on the NIL front. And that's really what this article I wrote gets to, is that, look, Dave Aranda in 2020, when he's hired, is pre-NIL and pre-transfer portal.
Yeah.
And Dave Aranda still wants to build this program out of love, right? Like, in his ideal world, players are going to schools because they love the coaching staff, they love the culture, and they find a home there. And
the power of friendship, yes.
And while that is true, it's not enough anymore. Like, there has to be money involved with that. And that's why you see Dave Aranda say we're paying players, because he's not going to sit here and lie to you and say it's only the culture. He always felt great about that. He always felt great about in-home visits, about how they were doing on the recruiting trail. They were in a lot of the final, like, four for these high-level prospects, and then it just didn't come through at the end because the monetary aspect was not competitive with other colleges. So he's basically what I would characterize as a guy who is trying to exist in this new world of college football without being of that world. He does not want college football to be transactional. And as it gets more transactional, he said in the article, I have a quote there, he's trying to be transformational in a transactional process, which I believe you can still do. Like, I believe when I talked to Lorena defensive lineman Jackson Blackwell, and he's like, Dave Aranda is the most honest Power 4 head coach I've met. That shows you that Dave Aranda is finding a lane here, and he is finding that balance. And that's why Baylor's been on fire on the recruiting trail.
And for those of us in the Baylor sphere, it's tough to look at Dave Aranda from an unbiased view at this point. He's been in our lives for a couple of years. There's been some ups, there's been some downs. So it's tough for us to kind of take a step back. But you, as someone who covers this and not inside the Baylor sphere, when you hear this about Dave Aranda and him being open about his off the field life and how this makes him feel, and it seems like desperate times calling for desperate measures at that or die kind of thing for a guy who almost got canned last year, to then have to go into this uncomfortable space. Does that give you more respect for Dave Aranda, or is it just most like, well, what else is he going to do?
No, I think it's respect for Dave Aranda, because a lot of times you see guys that when the going gets tough, they just put on a brave face and pump sunshine. I mean, that's what Big 12 Media Days and any media day is. We've never been deeper. We've never felt better about our program. We've never been more healthy. But Dave Aranda will get up there and tell you, like, when I first took this job, he came as a defensive coordinator from Wisconsin and LSU, and he was a football machine. And he watched football 24/7, and his relationships suffered. And you see what he says is when he took the Baylor job, he didn't want to be like that anymore. Like, he wanted to be more relational. He wanted to not have the football consume his mind. And while that's very honorable, he's also admitted he went too far with that. And he's kind of, it's like, Lord, forgive me, I got to go back to the old me a little bit. Like, he's got to go be the defensive coordinator again. And the duality piece I wrote, it's duality in two ways. Duality.
Double duality. I love that. Yes. Let's go.
The vortex here. One is being in the new college football world and being transformational in a transactional world. But two, it's just Dave Aranda as a guy in terms of he can be the football machine where it's football 24/7, his relationships suffer, or he can be, the program guy and he knows everyone's name. He's the nicest guy ever. And he's got to find this balance so that he can stay at Waco another year, because he's very honest. Like, he knows if last year happens again, he's gone. And he needs to just find that balance between the football Dave Aranda and the guy Dave Aranda.
It wouldn't be a Dave Aranda story unless there was duality. Like, we need to get deep with that. I love that. Was that your first time out in Vegas? Media days? How'd you like it? Oh,
I wasn't. Yeah, I wrote that remote.
Oh, yikes. That's bad. I'll cut that out of the final product, probably.
No, you're good. No, I am honored you thought I was in Vegas.
I definitely thought you were. No. Maybe I saw the other Dave Campbell's people there. Your time will come. Carter. Carter Yates, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Where can people find your work, and what do you have in the works? I know we're a couple of weeks away from those high school football camps opening.
Yeah, so we're going to be at SEC Media Days Monday through Thursday. I will be there in Arlington.
All right, gotcha.
For SEC Media Days. And then I'm doing high school stories, college stories, recruiting stories. I'm just writing about football in Texas right now. You can keep up with me at texasfootball.com. The Twitter right there, Carter_Yates16. Always doing the Republic of Football podcast every Tuesday now on Apple and Spotify. Man, that's all I got. I'm excited for a fun football season, though.
Awesome. By the way, I'm not cutting that out. You know what? God made me imperfect, so I'm just going to keep that in there. Carter Yates, thank you so much for joining the show. Really appreciate your time and hope to talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
A special thank you once again to Carter Yates of Dave Campbell's Texas Football for getting on there, breaking down this commitment. And really, I loved his piece on Dave Aranda. It's some of the same stuff that we've heard before, but looking at it through a different lens and really seeing it after this commitment does change a lot. You heard Carter talk a lot about it in there of, really having to adapt. What did he call it? Transformational rather than transactional, and having to do a little bit of both. I really liked the way he kind of portrayed that. And say what you will about Dave Aranda, and I've said this time and time again, it hasn't led to any wins yet this season, but he is changing his philosophy and he is getting uncomfortable, which is what we all have to go through, right? In any phase of life or any kind of maturation. And this is him doing it as a head coach at the Division I level. It's not always easy and it doesn't always work out, but I really like the direction that he is taking the program in terms of this summer and going forward. So we'll see how that works out and how they keep this class together. Thank you guys for making it your first listen today and every day. I really appreciate that. I know we've got a good deal of everydayers out there. A lot of you who were in the live stream on Saturday for that commitment. Thank you guys as well for doing that on a weekend. But we're getting you caught up all this week here on Locked On Baylor. So get involved. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. We'll tell you whenever we're dropping an episode here on YouTube. We're also going to get them anywhere you get your podcasts. It's completely free. Get involved down in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this commitment, what it means for the future of this program. I know it's not going to lead to anything this year necessarily in terms of what the guys are doing on the field in 2024, but this could be a great foundation for the future of this Baylor Bears football program. Let me know what you think about that. If your mind has changed on Dave Aranda since December, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you again for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you pretty soon here on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.